Trigger warning for discussions of transphobia. I have been into Project Sekai for a long time, since before it was released on JP, and for as long as I can remember, people were always making some off-the-wall theories about Mizuki and their gender because of the question mark on their character description. Yet, I think most of us find it to be extremely clear that Mizuki is a girl. A trans girl. Her story revolves around so many things that are intrinsic to the trans experience that would be very hard or near impossible to find separated from it. When you know Mizuki, you know that that question mark is a representation of their story arc in so many more ways than it could ever be a question of Mizuki's true gender identity overall. Mizuki is a wonderfully written character in so many ways, representing the struggles of so many who, before this, had never been able to see themselves in this genre of media before. Trans people deserve so much more visibility than they're actually getting, so the addition of Mizuki in Project Sekai is, again, wonderful. And even aside from that, her arc also serves to represent a large portion of Vocaloid music, because there are a ton of songs about being transgender, and having a character in that game to represent a part of the community is so incredibly thoughtful, just like how all the units represent the different genres and everything. You can make arguments for every character representing a different little factor, and Mizuki representing transness in Vocaloid is really cool. So with all that being said, you can imagine the surprise and kind of discomfort that it would bring one to see people actually thinking Mizuki is a cis crossdresser. That just kind of misses the point of her entire story. This stuff got so bad during the first month of Sekai having dropped that the wiki had to close off the comment section on her page. The way that we were like really closely trying to speculate this character's gender, like it was like obsessive, was already pretty kind of high-key, low-key weird. But the fact that it was with a character obviously meant to represent being trans femme and how people's lives are affected by hiding these parts of themselves due to fear of being ostracized or even despised by their loved ones, it's disgusting to insinuate that a character like that could be cis. Especially when you see instances where these people claiming to be theorizing in good faith are throwing around terms like trap and gross transphobic nonsense like that. But you know, on the bright side, that's all in the past. Now Project Sekai fans are smarter than ever, and they have enough reading comprehension to know that Mizuki is obviously a trans girl. I mean, come on, the new event story was the final nail in the coffin that went into confirming it, and it did it with so much understanding of the horrors of being outed that so many people in the LGBT community are recognized. Wait, are they really saying that Mizuki is a crossdresser again? Because of this? What? Hi, if you don't know me, my name is Wendy, they call me Shoujo, you're watching Shoujoism, and I hate Project Sekai fans! Before we get into it, I just want to say, no serious harassment to anyone, regardless of what they think about this topic, although if you're being genuinely transphobic through your theories on Mizuki, you are not welcome here, and you should not be welcome anywhere. The internet can be a dangerous place for mental health, and I think anybody should be given the chance to broaden their understanding while not being attacked or threatened. Prioritize educating, not hurting. In the comments, if you see someone saying something ignorant, don't harm them, because that is the best way to get what you're trying to say brushed off. Also, I feel it's important to mention that while I have many friends whose gender identities diverge from being cisgender, and that I'm very passionate about the topic of trans rights, I am not transgender myself, so I won't be speaking from any of my experiences in this video. And if I get something wrong, I'm totally open to correction. And if you're trans and you have something you want to add to the conversation, please sound off in the comments. Let your voice be heard. And last but not least, gotta mention that my videos are lighthearted and opinionated in nature, mostly featuring me talking from the heart and not so much the head, if you know what I mean. So I am so serious when I say this. Please don't expect something astounding or referenceable. Always take my content with a heap of salt because I have a lot of thoughts and I am a yapper, but unfortunately the brain fog goes crazy. Though that isn't to say you aren't free to reference me if you want to. Okay, but anyway, let's get into the why Mizuki is a crossdresser thing. It's actually really weird and undermining and nonsensical and low-key transphobic. Actually, high-key transphobic. Also, Mizuki just isn't a crossdresser. That's just not how her character works. So what are the differences between a character being trans and enjoying cross-dressing? I didn't think this is something we would have to go over as a fandom, but for the sake of this video, let's discuss the differences between characters who cross-dress and characters who are actually transgender. Depending on the character you mention, there can be some overlap because of stereotypes, but what I'm going to mention here is pretty general. Characters who cross-dress are almost always established to be the gender opposite to their representation, hence the term. The character's gender identity is almost never a point of importance to the character themselves outside of the fact that they're trying to contrast their appearance and their identity, because cross-dressing, that's the whole point. They are socially confident in who they are and how they choose to present themselves, because if they weren't, they wouldn't be doing it in the first place. The focus with characters who cross-dress is not their gender and has never been. A really great example of a cross-dressing character from an amazing show is Kuranosuke, my wife. from Princess Jellyfish. While he dresses super femininely, his canonical gender is that he is a man, which contrasts his expression. This post from Transgirl Media sums him up pretty well. Kuranosuke himself cross-dresses in part to subvert expectations placed on him by belonging to a powerful political family, though it's more so explained that he dresses the way he does because he remembers his mother as a strong, beautiful woman and wishes to honor that memory. He shows a clear and genuine interest in women's fashion and dressing the way he does. While I do believe there's a very strong case for the possibility of Kuranosuke being trans, the anime did not put a focus on his gender identity, which in a lot of ways is not a bad thing. Link to the blog post in the description if you want to check it out. So crossdressers are, typically, though I can't find any opposing examples, cisgender characters who confidently dress in a manner that contrasts their stereotypical gender identity while aligning with their usual gender identity. Dresses for boys, suits and ties for girls, you get the deal. Now, transgender characters differ from this a lot. Mainly, transgender characters usually do not contrast their gender identity with presentation. That's not to say that all trans people dress stereotypically to their gender, especially not in real life, but it's a telltale sign when a character does this because of dysphoria or general increased recognition as their gender, so blah, blah, blah. This is why cross-dressing characters are still cisgender while transgender characters are not, even though they're both dressing ways opposing to their sex. While both Lily from Zombieland Saga and Kuranosuke from Princess Jellyfish are of the male sex which was determined at birth, only one of them is a boy because your body doesn't matter when it comes to something abstract and societal like gender. Because if you were to ask me why I'm a girl and how I view my gender, I wouldn't really be able to give you a clear answer. Gender is one of, if not the most abstract concept humans have ever invented. There is no real answer to why I think I'm a girl. At least anyone who actually understands concepts of gender can understand how abstract they are. So because cross-dressing is based in your gender identity and contrasting your expression to it, Lily would only be a cross-dresser if she put on super masculine attire. If Mizuki was actually a cross-dresser, she would be dressing in masculine clothing, which I don't think she likes to do, given that literally all of her character is shown like this, and this is her fragment Sekai card. Guys, jumping off of that, a very important factor, actually probably the most important factor to a character being trans and not a cross-dresser is, as I teased before, the fact that a trans character's gender is always a point of importance, completely different from cross-dressing. Cross-dressing characters have their opposing presentation regardless of their view of their own sex in relation to their gender. And most importantly in this case, they are socially confident in their gender identity. So while a trans character cares about their gender, that's like the main contention of being trans, a cross-dresser doesn't care about it because cross-dressing is just a style, not an identity. So if a character is focused heavily on identity, they're probably not a cross-dresser because cross-dressing is a style. It can affect identity, but not in the same way gender does for these trans characters. And most importantly, cross-dressing characters are socially confident in their gender identity. I say socially confident because many of the transgender characters, including Mizuki, accept themselves, but the real problem is about how people see them, how they're viewed for being trans, in contrast to how they see and understand themselves. Cross-dressers do what they do with confidence, that's the whole point of it. Outside of fiction, these characters often stand for a symbol of confidence. Gender is internal. It's something, again, incredibly abstract and complex, making it something with an importance that extends past simple style choices or the bathroom you walk into. To trans characters, especially those focused on being trans like Mizuki, gender is the most important part of their story, but cross-dressers, gender's not even a factor. Again, it's so unimportant that it only matters when they're opposing it. So really, cross-dressing and transness are kind of complete opposites when it comes to these characters. One contrasts with their biological sex while still accepting it, and the other doesn't want to accept it because it's not who they actually are. So now that we've established that, let's get into the next part of this video. Mizuki. For those who haven't read the new Project Sekai event, known in the pits as Mizu5,
Anna, my secret is that I'm trans. Thank you for telling me, Mizuki. I still think you're awesome.
go read it. It is a haunting yet so well written chapter in Mizuki's story, and it will be remembered forever as one of the most heart-wrenching rhythm game events of all time.
みんなはずっと変わらないって。そう思わせてくれるんだって。
Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, it's so important that the story is being told, and I'm so happy trans representation is actually present in this form of media that I love so much. Go give it a read. What are you waiting for? If you're not planning to read it yourself, though you should, here's a short summary from me. It's time for another Kamiko festival, and Mizuki has just about built up the confidence to tell Enna her secret. She discusses the situation with Rui, who encourages her in the most ideal way possible, then with Meiko, who promises to stay by her side no matter what the outcome is, and Kaito, who has absolutely zero tact, as always. And after a long, amazing day of getting to have fun with all of Night Court, Mizuki and Enna meet on the rooftop. Mizuki, after having had a wonderful time with the most important people in her life, starts to feel better about the situation, loving her friends and wanting to stay with them forever. But she's just about to tell Enna when there's an emergency. One of Mizuki's classmates has been badly hurt, so Mizuki runs down to help them and then return. While Enna's waiting for them to come back, she overhears a conversation of Mizuki's other classmates. That's weird, it kind of sounds like they're talking about a guy. Oh my god, you know Akiyama? Yeah? Why? That's so funny, are you a guy too? What? Enna? When Mizuki returns, we get this scene. After you clear the event story, Mizuki doesn't appear in the real world anymore. You can only find her in the Sekai, and when she's in your menus, her eyes are completely lifeless. And they'll stay that way, probably until her next focus event. That is just so... God. And it makes me extra confused as to how people can still see Mizuki as a crossdresser. In this next half of the video, I want to talk about two things. The first one being that the idea of Mizuki being a crossdresser undermines her story and its themes. What do I mean by this? Well, let's think about Mizuki as a character. Mizuki, for the whole run of Project Sekai so far, has been a character focused around being secretive, specifically in regards to their gender, because that's what the story has been hinting at for these last 4 years, through background characters, her forms of expression and mannerisms, and even that question mark in her profile where her gender would be otherwise. All of this implies that her story can only be about one thing, her gender identity in contrast to her body. Now, crossdressers have a different style and flaunt it because of how little they care about their gender. Mizuki's story, however, is very much so focused on her insecurity in sharing the truth about this gender identity to the people that she loves because she is afraid that they will leave her being quote-unquote disgusting.
The scene afterwards where Mizuki is crying shows a lot about confirmation that it's about her transness, because now that Enna knows that she's trans, she feels like she won't be able to see the image of Mizuki's real self, who is a girl, and she feels like no matter how accepting or kind or understanding that Enna will be, the image of her being a real girl, which is her real self, is shattered because of the fact that she's male.
Okay, and this could be considered me just going for low-hanging fruit on this, but I just really think this theory is transphobic. I'll explain why later, so I feel like I have the right to do this. People who believe in the crossdresser theory misconstrue Mizuki's entire story so much that this one person on Twitter who adamantly believes in it replied to me saying, well, nothing you say changes the fact that Mizuki isn't hiding anything. And it's like, you're denying the entire story arc of this character just because you want them to be cis. Are you crazy? Throughout the story, characters refer to her with they/them pronouns or in ways that exclude gender from the conversation. This is a mechanism the writers use to show us that Mizuki's friends, mainly Night Court, do not know the truth about Mizuki being trans. If it was only about Mizuki's sex, the writers wouldn't give Mizuki's gendered pronouns this ambiguity. It just serves as a symbol by the writers to show that Mizuki's gender is what the secret is about and not their sex. If the situation was real and everyone thought Mizuki was a cis girl, she/her probably would have been used just fine, but because this is a fictional piece of media that is being written by people, the use of they/them pronouns to make this about gender and not sex can't really be dismissed. What's the point of referencing a character's gender with ambiguity when their sex would be the real point of contention? In that case, there's no reason to use vague language for gender. The crossdresser plot doesn't work from a writing standpoint as well as the trans plot does just for stuff like that. At the end of the day, it's a plot device. The fear that Mizuki feels and the locking away of her truth, combined with the fact that Mizuki's narrative is not about sex, paints a pretty clear picture of what this character is really focused on. Again, transness. So I find the crossdresser theory to have pretty flimsy logic after you think about it for a little longer. The basis for Mizuki's story is not focused on that. Now, a lot of people took this final scene of the story featuring Mizuki's classmates who refer to Mizuki as a boy as confirmation that Mizuki is a crossdresser. And this makes sense if you have I'm gonna be mean here. It makes sense if you took everything extremely literally and had zero reading comprehension skills. This scene is actually confirming that Mizuki is a transgender character and not a crossdresser, because her classmates are pulling a bit of the transphobia here. For one, "Are you a boy too?" is signifying that they do not respect Mizuki's gender identity and only see her for her sex. And the reason this is transphobia and not them knowing the truth about Mizuki's gender and just expounding it to Enna without Mizuki's consent is because in the context of the story, do you really think that the big dark secret Mizuki is keeping from Enna and all of Night Court, and this is ignoring all of the obvious hints pointing to the secret being about Mizuki's gender, why would the secret be known by Mizuki's entire homophobic class? Why would Mizuki... Whatever. This isn't a scene where Mizuki's friends are going up to Enna and correcting her out of respect for Mizuki. This isn't an, "Oh hey, this person's gender is actually this, so make sure to refer to them properly." This isn't even a "her pronouns are they them" moment. These characters, if you focus on the logical writing of this story, and if you notice the role these bystanders have played in Mizuki's arc since day one, which is so obvious, they are clearly bullies. These characters are bullies who are misgendering Mizuki, not people who have genuine respect for her and wish to correct those who refer to them improperly. And when they're saying things like, "Are you a boy too?" to Enna, implying that the freaks must be friends with more subhuman people like them, which is also a transphobic stereotype in the real world, further connecting Mizuki to Transness, is pretty clear that they don't actually care or value Mizuki's real identity as a person. Mizuki's classmates saw them before they started wearing all the cute clothes, which you could make an argument for, "That's how they know the truth of Mizuki's gender, even though that's Mizuki pre-transition. Mizuki wouldn't talk to these judgmental people about her gender identity with trust. All they know is that her sex contrasts her presentation. They're the ones who think Mizuki is a crossdresser, actually. The bullies who caused the very objectively bad ending of this event through their assumptions and lack of knowledge on Mizuki's true self, who are framed as the bad guys. They're the ones seeing Mizuki as a crossdresser. They're not informing Enna of the truth. They're spreading their misconceptions about Mizuki to her. And saying that these people's words are confirming something, whether or not the text itself confirms Mizuki's transness, the story structure does. Through the clear-cut villainization and lack of empathy the writers want us to have for these bully characters. These characters, as well as every character in a story, are plot devices. Again, while thinking about the world inside of a story and within its limitations is wonderful, at the end of the day, this is something that was written, something with a structure and actions that happened because a writer deemed it as such and wanted to get across a specific message. And these bullies are your textbook villains who are meant to ruin things through their lack of care for our character. And lack of care for a character like Mizuki translates into misgendering. And if not misgendering, misinterpreting their identity. And a crossdresser's identity is separate to their style. And also Mizuki is so extremely secretive about their secret. That's the whole point of their story. So why on earth would someone like her, whose entire arc is about distrust and anxiety, have talked about their true gender identity as a boy to these classmates, let alone to anyone, if the whole point... I can't do it, guys. I can't do it. These people are so dumb. Call this one J and call this one K, because we're about to see them rolling when Enna gets to them. Are you boy too? Because weird boys who wear dresses can only have friends with other weird boys who wear dresses. Mizuki isn't afraid of people finding out she's a boy, because she's not a boy. She's afraid of people finding out her gender identity doesn't line up with her physical body. The physical body that so many transphobes, like her classmates, are putting heavy importance on for absolutely no reason other than to undermine her gender. Because apparently having the wrong body makes someone less of a woman. Pure evil. Like I've said a million times, cross-dressing only involves gender when it comes to the divergence of it, and from the norm through the style. Mizuki is clearly different from this if you take in all the context. Again, her story is about identity, it is about gender, and especially gender in contrast to sex, and cross-dressers, sex and gender line up. They are cis, and they have a different style. They're not always cis. This is generalization, but generalizations are made in fiction, so we're making them for this argument because, guys, I'm tired. Plus, are you trying to tell me that this is the expression of someone who just got exposed for being a guy who likes to wear feminine fashion? Absolutely not. There is no circumstance where something like that would be more horrifying than being forcefully outed as being a trans girl by transphobic people. This horror is running deep. Deeper than a beloved style choice, deeper than someone divulging the fact that your gender identity and your biological body line up. It's about an identity divergent from what others can see that is being undermined. Now, this isn't to diminish the plights of people who are cis and feel restricted by social standards telling them how to present, but in that same way, denying Mizuki's transness is diminishing to trans women and their plights, which are unfortunately objectively far more horrific. They cannot be overwritten by this notion that the character being portrayed here isn't trans, and this overwriting itself is kind of transphobic. Actually, it's very transphobic, so let me get to point 2. The idea of Mizuki being a crossdresser is inherently transphobic, whether that's the intention of the person making the theory or not. I don't think it is, but it still leads to transphobic ideas being spread. First things first, let's get into a counter argument to this point that I know is gonna come up out of the way. Crossdressers also face discrimination. They're also afraid of being hated, and hey, in a small portion of circumstances, maybe even afraid of being outed, which I'm kind of just saying to, like, you know, throw them a bone, because I feel like the whole point of being a crossdresser is that you're contrasting, you're cross-dressing. They can't know you're cross-dressing if you're hiding the fact that you're not. That's why it doesn't make any sense, because Mizuki is, why would you hide the fact that you? And to that I say, you're right, crossdressers can face discrimination, especially because in the LGBT community, ideas of diverging from the expression that society says is typical for your gender are very prevalent. A lot of people associate crossdressing with being trans or gay, which is not only really ignorant, but also denies the reality that while this person is expressing their gender differently, they can still be cis or heterosexual. It's super generalizing in a way that can affect specifically men really negatively due to the patriarchy. They're not free to express themselves, and that's horrible. This assumption is harmful in so many ways, and focusing on what it does to crossdressers in specific, it restricts their freedom and sanctity in that freedom. So why do I say it's transphobic if Mizuki were to be a cross-dressing boy who feels afraid because of the patriarchy? By saying that Mizuki is a cross-dressing boy, you are erasing an undeniably trans story. You are denying it. A story you'd have to be very blind to anything related to gender to not see the aspects of. The erasure is taking place in service of representing another plight, that of those who choose to express themselves differently. But if the people who are cis while expressing themselves differently face discrimination because they're seen as aligning with LGBTQ ideology, who do you think the ones society is really viewing as monstrous are? The cis crossdresser feels the hit, but trans people feel the brunt. And regardless of that, by claiming Mizuki is a crossdresser, you're saying she's a cis boy who just happens to dress femininely, when we have already established that Mizuki is so much more than that. And there's also an incredibly prevalent, horrifically disgusting stereotype, mainly targeted towards trans women, that they're just men in women's clothes, hiding as girls to sneak into all-female spaces, monsters lurking in the shadows, disgusting men who think they're fooling everyone. This stereotype is one of, or maybe the most disgusting stereotype ever propagated, especially in our modern day, because Mizuki's story beats are far too heavily connected to transness, objectively so. This crossdresser theory, even if a mere headcanon, resembles the reality of this disgusting stereotype to a T. Do I think the people spreading this idea are completely irredeemable in this transphobia? Absolutely not. But do I think the theory itself will always promote transphobia, whether or not the player believing it knows that? Of course it does. Because denying a trans girl's transness and saying she's just a boy dressing like a girl, that is horrible, that is evil, and it resembles the evils of the real world so much that it's downright uncomfortable. Stereotypes like this are reasons trans women don't feel safe entering all women's spaces, because what if they think I'm a creepy man? Or what if they think I'm a predator? What if they think I'm just some guy dressed in girls' clothes? Just like you're assuming of Mizuki. No one should have to feel like that, and stereotypes like this are the cause. We can't silence in-text representation. By making her a boy, by making her cis, you're taking so much away from people who need this story. People could be saved by it. When trans lives are being threatened every single day through legislation getting passed against them having the freedom to be who they want to be, and these trans kids are ending their own lives because they're being restricted so much, these stories are too important to overwrite. I just can't imagine what it would be like as a trans girl who loves Mizuki to hear this theory and either drop the game because of rumors or see real people undermine the reality of the trans experience that Mizuki is portraying through this theory. That would be so annoying at best, utterly painful at worst. Please be mindful when you create a headcanon that overwrites representation. Because while all representation matters, like that of cis people who want to express themselves differently, some people need it more. Some people usually don't get it at all. Some people feel so alone and they need this so badly. After all this, I have just one last question. Why do you want Mizuki to be a boy so badly? Why? I don't understand. Why do you want Mizuki to be a boy so bad? Why is it that when you see a character who dresses femininely, whose story is focused on gender, who is of the male sex, why is it that your first thought is that a trap? Do you hate trans women that much? Do you see a character as less interesting when she's trans or a girl? Do you see a character as more interesting when they're a disgusting, monstrous, deceiving stereotype? Do you really think it's cooler to hear from the same experiences with being cisgender that we've been hearing so often in our media? Because I think it's infinitely cooler to hear about the painfully tragic yet loved and full life of a trans girl. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm really nervous to post this one because I don't want to attract transphobes or any other weirdos to this platform because I hate dealing with that, bro. It's exhausting, it's disheartening, it's the worst. And I also don't think I did a perfect job for this one. I'm not too built for serious stuff, and again, the brain fog hits me really hard. But I felt like this story was far too important not to talk about, especially as someone who makes a lot of content with Project Sekai. I love this game for including this, so if my video can help just one more person discover this heartbreakingly beautiful story, it's worth it. Whether or not my arguments were outstanding, I hope I at least did an okay job at explaining my thoughts on this. If you're trans or just know more about Mizuki and or the trans experience, please fill in any blanks you've spotted here in the comments. I'll try to leave a heart on any that I think are helpful surrounding this topic so they stand out. Also, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and share this video with someone who will appreciate it. Also, please watch my other videos, especially my recent one about Mooney from D4DJ and how I think she represents borderline personality disorder insanely well. I really care about that video, so please check it out if you enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for being here, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Keep living, because that's the only way things can get better, no matter what happens. Always hold out hope. See ya.